Fair enough. Well, there's a lot to worry about, and I think now, though, is time for us to get to the moment that we have been waiting for, jumping into Game 1 of ALGS Season 1 for 2022-2023. This is Apac South. Hope you enjoy your stay and see what we're going to get here on Storm Point to kick things off.
Moist Esports, as we mentioned there, landing centrally at Cascade. Typically, it's been a very good POI for people to pick. It's been a very successful POI as well. You know, this is where Liquid were landing at the LAN. They ended up coming second at that one, I think. And it's you know, there's a lot of people who land here at the start, and then it's very coveted. Often it's the top teams that are taking this very central location, good loot, you know, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, indeed. All right, well, as far as hot drops are concerned, I'm really not seeing too much. Maybe 2 mouse and keyboard, 1 pad in fairly close proximity to MDY, but it doesn't look like they're going to actually run into one another. Moist Esports, they're going to have to be a little bit aware of that as well, because they're quite close to both of those two aforementioned teams as well, but again, just chilling, doing a bit of replicating, you know, already 2 sets of purple armor. Good start to the game here for Moist, you know, center zone. Looks like they've got some decent loot off the drop, and obviously the circle pool has pretty much gone right over the top of them as well, so they'll be very, very happy with that. And I think they've got the info in just a second as well. Waltzy looking for the second beacon there, so all well, that ends well for Moist Esports, and move over to SRY. Another one of the kind of interesting teams, I think, to keep an eye on. A little bit of an amalgamation, maybe, of a couple of players we've seen in previous seasons of ALGS. Yanleys and Sway, definitely seen them before. Yase, perhaps a little bit new to this level of competition, but it is, for all intents and purposes, a new team.
Yeah, it looks like Sneaky B did get Antenna to themselves. We've seen the other teams spread out. There's actually a couple that I think didn't have a great spot to start with. MDY got kind of sandwiched in the middle between a lot. And we did see Dugu Play actually take over Fish Farms and Gale Station. So not ceding all of that ground over to EXO like we have seen in some other instances. The circle, it is starting to pull a little bit north. Just trying to find some of the extra info on it. But yeah, look, teams definitely starting to make their rotations now. We have had one small change, Elfish, I guess, which is that you can't scan the beacon immediately to get the ring 2 information anymore. So if you want to play that early rotate style, you either have to wait to scan the beacon once the first circle appears, or you have to try and find a beacon on rotation. That's going to be a little bit of a playstyle change for some of these teams.
Yeah, certainly, and speaking of, Sinky B have got themselves a beacon to scan here. I've already seen where the next beacon is going to go, but for these guys, this will be the first bit of info they're going to get, and it does actually pull quite hard south of that first ring. A vast majority of teams that already had that info have already made their rotation in. Hermagerd, which is a great team name, by the way, have made a rotation. Moist have made a rotation. 2 mouse and keyboard, 1 pad. They were already in the center of Phase 2. MDY White, Emmanuel, they're all starting to make their rotation. So there's a very, very quick early sort of movement from a bunch of teams. Stinky B, you know, they're not in the worst of positions here. Obviously just doing a little bit of prowler clearing on their way through, but they're sort of, you know, relatively nearby to where they need to be. I think this can be a bit of a tougher area of the map to play because there are a lot of choke points to work through, but most teams have got a Valkyrie in tow, so worst comes to worst, you've always got that Skyward Dive to get out if need be.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting spot to play in from as well. You can see using the shield there on that Newcastle to try and just push through, just in case there was someone lurking in there. Nice little defensive play. But yeah, so the zone won't end in Jurassic Park, basically. So, but this zone, the second zone, is actually has quite a bit of Jurassic Park in it. So you can kind of you know, hedge your bets a little bit here. You can stay within there and you'll be safe knowing that, like, you know, there's not really going to be many teams rotating through there. But then that could hurt you come the later zones where you know you are going to have to rotate eventually.
Well, it helps you to keep the resources pretty healthy, maybe. There's a fair bit of loot in there as well to pick up if necessary. Keeping a look at Truth Esports, you would have known these guys as Ath last season. Zaijin God, Mosu, Nutsuru Sama, definitely, I think a roster that we had high expectations for last season that maybe didn't quite hit that level. So I think coming back into 2022, 2023 for these guys, still quite high expectations in my opinion. I'd like to see them kind of reach those heights that we saw from them probably back more towards 2020 prior to 2021.
Yeah, I mean, they had a big playstyle change, right? And I think they really struggled to make that work. They used to be a fairly rotate-heavy team, and then, you saw them hooning around in Tridents and all this kind of fun stuff as the second split of ALGS 2.0 rocked around. And, yeah, that's when we saw them start to fall off a bit. So it'll be interesting to see which end of the spectrum they end up here. Come ALGS Year 3.
Indeed, indeed. Just doing a bit of replicating out in the zone by the mill still. It's a bit of a ways to go, but, traditionally you do have those tridents out there that you can rotate with, so they should be okay. Aside from them, the only other team that really hasn't made much of a rotation yet is SRY, who actually don't have info on that second zone yet, nor does Truth, by the way. So they're not really sure what they're going to be rotating into. And I suppose that's why at this point they're thinking, maybe let's play the long game. Let's try to get as many resources as possible so that when we do inevitably have to come back in, we are going to be as healthy as possible. We're going to have the upgraded armor. Sitting on the blues right now always leaves a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth because, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's obviously better than the whites, but it sort of feels like the bare minimum that you need to be competitive, really wanting to get toward the purples as fast as possible. And they're not really going to have an opportunity to do that.
Well, it's harder
because
now.
They're going to be spending a lot of time in the ring as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the changes, right, that's happened from between Year 2 and Year 3, was the damage to some of those initial rings has been increased. We're still in Season 14, right? So this means you've got the even harsher ring changes in terms of how fast those initial rings are pushing in. Once we get halfway through the season and start changing over into the Season 15 patch, that will be, changed slightly in terms of we're going to have a little bit more time for these teams to rotate in that first circle. But yeah, it was a little bit of a nerf to this playstyle, right? A bit of a nerf to the playstyle where teams are just trying to craft those red armors in the storm, in the zone, permanently, basically.
Yeah, a little bit of a slower game that we're getting out to start things off. And, maybe that is to be expected in the first game of the season. A lot of teams just trying to feel things out. You don't want to be the team that's going down really early on in the piece. You kind of want to be getting warmed up pretty early. Easing yourself into the season as best as possible. Boys have set themselves up quite nicely. Obviously, they've got that Watson coming through, as has been pretty much the case for them for a while now. Jarrow as well, tending to play the Newcastle. That's been brought out too. So that's probably the composition that you're going to be seeing them play here and on World's Edge as well when we do get over to that one. I don't think that they tend to change it up too much. A lot of teams used to change it up. We used to see a bit more of the Corsic maybe on World's Edge than we did on Stormpoint. Don't see that anymore. And I'd say, based on what I've seen as well, just taking a look at some of the scrims and such, most teams, they seem to be playing the same comp on both maps. There are obviously a couple that tend to change things up, like maybe a Seer in for a Watson or a Crypto here and there. But for the vast majority, it seems like they're actually more than happy to just stick with the same three, whatever that three may be, although they're not always necessarily the same three for every team, obviously.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a little bit... I didn't expect that quite as much, honestly. I mean, yeah, obviously with Seer coming more into the meta, it does seem to be quite a flexible legend, but it's just, the maps do play out quite differently, and I would have expected teams to lean into that as much as possible, but maybe it's just that, learning one composition and learning how that plays is, more beneficial than trying to tailor it to each map.
Yeah, I think it's a comfort thing as well, depending on the teams and players. Sometimes you have players that really do just feel comfortable on one or two select legends. And I think it is a big difference maker at a level like this, the sort of 1%ers or the 2%ers. If you're not 100% comfortable with your pick, then that can kind of get exploited when you're playing against the best of the best. So we'll sort of see how that goes. Keep track of it as we go through the day and go through the season.
Man, this has been an incredibly slow start for an Apac South lobby, hasn't it, Elfish? I mean,
Yep.
we've had I don't think we've had a single kill yet, right? We've had a couple of knocks, I believe, and MDY and 2 MNK, 1 Padder both playing as a duo today. So we've got the full 20 squads, just a couple of people missing though. Yeah, so we haven't had a single kill, and round 2 is about to close. That is almost unheard of for Apac South.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much longer that's really going to last. Already you can start to see a few more shots getting tossed all over the place. 505. They're feeling the pressure a little bit, trying to put some back down as well on teams that are rotating past. Have to say though, this next circle shift is going to be the big difference maker. You know, it's been quiet so far, but the real estate is starting to look pretty busy. And when this next ring pull starts to come through and teams have to start moving, I think that's where we're going to start to see some problems. So,
yeah,
already, you know, you can look at 505 and say they've got a long way to go.
I guess I shouldn't be too surprised because, you know, we've got 17 teams out of the 20 who are running a Watson. And, you know, if you're thinking back to either the start of ALGS or even pre-ALGS, competitive Apex, when Watson was meta and you had the sort of the Watson Pathfinder, you know, those kind of compositions that people were running, this is what happened. People were very defensive. You would set up your perimeter fences, you chuck down your interception pylon somewhere, and you camp the hell out of it. And, you know, we didn't see a lot of fights until people were forced to take space away from each other. So even though teams are playing CR, which, you know, when... Of course, you think back to Rally, to Furia, of course, that's what first comes to mind when this composition comes up. You know, they're not playing it in that same aggressive way because they're sort of giving themselves both the offensive and the defensive option with the Seer and the Watson on a lot of these teams.
This is a bit of an interesting spot to be in for Emmanuel as well because their rotation is not so big. They don't have too far to go, but they are also in front of a couple of teams, which they probably will know. They've got Chambers on that crypto. He can get that drone up in the sky, have a bit of a look around. They should know that They Were United is behind them in toward Jurassic Park. The MDY has a team over there as well. So even if they're feeling comfortable about their rotation, they also have to consider the teams that are coming in behind them, that if they make a bit of a logjam, they are going to get stuck in an engagement maybe on the edge of the ring that they probably don't want to be in. So it'd be interesting to see what they're going to do as far as their rotation is concerned. Truth have spent a bit of time marking out their territory, as you can see, with the Watson fences up. But again, there's a couple of members really close by to them that they are going to have to be aware of. GQ quite close by. We also talked about SRY coming down from the north quite late. They've come into a position quite similar to Truth Esports. So it has to come to a head shortly. I mean, I feel like we've been patient enough, but surely something has to happen soon.
Yeah, round 3 is closing, and I can almost assure you that we will be getting a couple of fights happening soon, guys. You've been patient, you've waited long enough, and there you can go. Even the first couple of knocks starting to pull through. EXO grabbing one with the longbow. These guys up the top, honestly, Truth probably won't see too much because there is a bit of space around them, and teams like SRY, as you said, or GQ also will be pretty safe. It's more going to be in the middle, I think, where we're seeing teams like Boogie Boarders have to fight their way into the zone.
Yeah, and it's getting a little bit busy here for Moist. They were pretty much one of the first teams to make their rotation in. As you can see, they've well and truly set up their building with the fences, with the Newcastle shields, with the alternator pylons as well. They've pretty much got the pick of the positions. It's just getting a bit awkward because teams are starting to get interested and they're starting to look and they're starting to think, okay, maybe we want to take this away from Moist, or at least we want to pressure them and make them feel the pump a little bit. So far, they're feeling pretty okay. They're looking pretty good. But you can just see the amount of teams that are set up in this just one set of buildings. There's 3 teams already there. There's a couple just on the outskirts as well. Golden Sage, definitely one to keep an eye on. Oh my god, as well, was a faster rotate. I think that's the team that's actually copying shots right now. As we jump back over to EXO, who's down south. And this is a bit of an awkward spot to be in because they've got a big rotate to make. They've got to go past a couple of teams. might have to default back to the skyward dive because there is 2 teams in front of them.
Well, they're making the most of it right now, Elfish. They've got 4 kills to their name already, and as we said, not a lot of teams have gone down, so that's not too bad. You can see them going up against Valiant. The Seer ults go down.
Do indeed. And Strafing Flame with that PK out straight away, trying to make the difference for his team. Has dropped Dexter. You've got another knock as well for them. Valiant looking good in this engagement against EXO, who will be the first team to drop in that engagement. And Valiant doesn't look like there's going to be a third party coming through onto them. They've got enough space to reset, get some armor swaps through if they need them. Heal back on up. Not a good start to the day for EXO, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a bracket matchup there. Valiant had already taken down a squad, so did EXO, and then they kind of got thrown up against each other, and Valiant coming out on top this time. So now they're going to be the kill leaders in the lobby with 5 kills to their name. EXO had 4 before they went out. The zone has shifted a little bit more southerly. So, you know, you were saying how many teams are in those couple of buildings. Well, guess what? The one that Moist is in is very much safe. They're okay for the moment. But the 3 teams in the building to the northwest of them are going to have to move now, Elfish.
Yep, most definitely. And not only them, but also a couple of the other teams up toward the north. You've got 505 right here, who are definitely going to have to move at some point. Are they going to just try to crash in onto Moist? I wonder if that building can maybe hold another member or 2. Another couple of teams could potentially look toward it. Maybe once the zone pulls in, someone can play the roof as well, because that high ground above it won't be a factor anymore either. And I think that's what 505 is actually thinking about right now. I'm just watching them on my screen work their way onto the roof. Moist with Waltz, he will just push his way out, but instantly booked down to very low HP. Just has to go back inside and hide, heal back up on those shields, and let, as you can hear, the rest of the fighting ensue outside and on top of the building.
Yep, on top, underneath. It's like there's just termites running around in this building, infesting it all of a sudden. The Indonesian team, free agents, have found their space. As you can see, Waltzy thought maybe he was going to catch them off guard, but they just turned on a dime and almost put him down. So Moist Esports, that said, because they've been so well set up, they've had the pylons to charge their shields in the meantime. They've been able to get up to, you know, starting some red armors there. Moist in a fantastic spot. They will be having to move in the next circle, though, Elfish. It's shifted south yet again.
Emmanuel Hermagod, Golden Sage and Boogie Borders all getting taken down in that brief period as well. It had to happen eventually. It had to come to a head. There's just so much going on. So many teams still alive that very difficult for anyone to be surviving at this point. Free agents will drop. Waltzy is on the floor, though, for Moist here. So maybe something that a team could take advantage of. Rez coming through. You can still hear those shots coming through from 505. That's on the roof of where Moist is playing right now. And they're doing a lot of damage, actually, 505. But they're not picking up a huge amount of kills as a squad just yet. They are, though, at the very least, carving out their territory on the roof of this building, which is something that Moist is going to have to be very aware of. Because now, both of these teams are also going to have to move. The circle has again pulled south. It's again gone away from these buildings. And, well, now push is going to come to shove for Moist, who have done a pretty good job of keeping themselves healthy, stacking up that armor as well. Was that an Arcstar stick? I'm not sure. I don't think so. But either way, Waltz is going to get himself a knock onto Surprise, and that is going to be what Moist needs to start their push out of this building. Basie goes down as well. 4505 down to just Axelic right now. And he's jumping off the top of the roof, trying to take that fight to Moist, but inevitably a 1-on-3. It's just not going to happen against a team the caliber of Moist, who still somehow are so healthy.
They're so good, just using some of those defensive abilities there from the Newcastle to push further and further into the zone as Dugu play that are just ahead of them on the gravity cannon here. These guys have been waiting for this zone to come in and try and pressure anyone who made it through the gauntlet, who made it out of those incredibly tough fights at the buildings. Moist Esports are still too damn good, though.
Oh, I don't know if they're going to be able to get the res off here. Jaro down on the floor. They're desperately trying to pick him back up, but it's too much. Valiant will take them down. Good cross shots coming through. You talked about a gauntlet run there by Moist, and inevitably they do meet their end at the hands of Valiant, who have, as you can see here on this overhead view, kind of carved out a really nice position for themselves. They've got good sets of rocks to play around. They're fairly uncontested on that side of the zone. There's a big stack of a couple of teams up toward the northern side, and obviously SRY down on the other side as well. So 4 teams remaining.
Well, you know how they did that, Elfish. It was by 13 kills. 13 kills is how they carved that space out for themselves. And meanwhile, you know, Truth going up against Northside Esports here. Valiant just look on. They've got enough kills in the bank here that they're just hoping to finish this off with some extra placement points, maybe in the double digits. Maybe they'll take out the dub if they're lucky. The other team on the south side, SRY, are coming in to try and finish off Truth Esports. You can see that they're almost done. But yeah, we've only got this this final to go now.
Yeah, Northside Esports able to finish off Truth Esports on the northern side. As you mentioned, there are two teams still to worry about, but those teams a little bit more southern than Northside. Funnily, a team called Northside is playing the north side of the zone, but we won't touch on that for too long. They are going to have to start making their way back on down into the waiting arms of SRY.
Oh, no.
Might have bitten off a little bit more than he could chew. He's taken down really early on in the piece, and now it's down to Emil and James. And I don't think they're going to be too long for this world. Valiant is coming through with a vengeance. SRY eliminated. And it won't be too much longer before Valiant will be crowned champions in Game 1 of ALGS Season 1. And what a start to the season it was for them. That is a massive win in the books already.